Hi everybody, and thank you for being here on Friday night. It's this semester we keep welcoming Berlin-based poets. Today with us is Maria Stepanova and Sasha Dugdale, her translator into English from England. We are very fortunate to have them pass through New York on a tour with this beautiful book and readings from other publications as well. Before I introduce them, I wanted to emphasize that our next event is also going to be a Berlin-based poet, Ina Krasnoper, on Monday the 25th in the same room at the same time. So please come back. And welcome back to Hunter, Masha.
Thank you so much.
Masha is a Russian language poet who is based in Berlin since 2022. She hardly needs an introduction, but let me just say that, of course, she's the recipient of multiple book prizes and awards, including the Andrei Bely Prize, the Brodsky Fellowship, the Big Book Prize, and NOS. She's also editor-in-chief of Koita.ru, an online cultural portal, which today is blocked in Russia, but is accessible and vibrant still today from outside. Stepanova's novel, Memory of Memory, also translated by Sasha Dugdale into English, came out in 2021, and it was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize. And her newest novel, Fokus, which has not yet been published in English, is forthcoming next year. So we will maybe keep it for a few questions. If anyone read it in the original, we can certainly ask, I hope, a question or two about that as well. So today, Masha will read her original works and also answer the questions that you might have at the end. Sasha Dugdale is her English translator and a poet, whose own book, Deformations, in 2022 was shortlisted for T.S. Eliot and the Walcott prizes. She's a fellow of the Royal Society of Literature and the author of 6 collections of poetry, including the Strongbox, published this year. She has translated other Russian language, mainly women poets, including Elena Shvarts and Marina Tsvetaeva, as well as her, and she also translated for theaters in the UK and in the US, including New York Public Theatre and the UK's Royal Court Theatre and the Royal Shakespeare Company. So once again, thank you for being here. It's a real pleasure, honor, and we're just simply so lucky to have both Masha and Sasha today here with us. And this is partly thanks to my friend and colleague from Columbia, Mark Lipovetsky, who has organized a full marathon of other events about Sasha's work at Columbia University, the Harriman Institute. And instead of me paraphrasing, I will just give the microphone to Mark for a second to announce just what's coming next week and even tomorrow.
Tomorrow too.
And please, there can never be enough of Masha's readings and events, and definitely I hope even this event will not feel like sufficient.
Thank you very much, Gasha. I won't take too much time because I'm standing between Masha, Sasha, and you. So we have a series of events, and the flyers are here. So I only have 3. So if you are interested, you may just approach and photograph them. I will list them tomorrow. There will be Sasha's masterclass in translation. You still can join it, followed by Sasha's reading. On Monday, there will be a symposium dedicated to Holy Winter, followed by Masha's and Sasha's and Eugene Astashevsky's reading. And on Tuesday, the director of the Harriman Institute and the Harriman Institute, the organizer of all these events, Valentina Zmirova, will be conversing with Masha about political and maybe not only political issues. So please photograph it and please come to us. The only thing that you have to take into consideration, you have to get the registration in order to enter the the campus, so that you have to go to the Harriman website, find the event, and register there, and that will do the trick. Sorry.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mark.
you.
And finally, as you can see, we also have Masha's and Sasha's books for sale. Thank you so much, Shakespeare Company, for bringing them. I hope I'm not wrong to say that the author and translator would be able to sign them for you at the end. And once again, thanks for bringing them. So let's welcome our guests to Hunter and to Tamizdat project. We have brochures about the project if you'd like to learn more. And thank you so much.
Dear Yasha, is it working?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Dear Yasha, dear Mark, thank you so much. It is an exquisite pleasure and honor to be here tonight and in New York in general. I feel, well, practically reborn. The light is beautiful, the weather seems good. And a lot of people I know and love are here today, which makes it, well, feel like a reunion of sorts. And some amazing writers and poets as well. Thank you for being here. Elena who is going to read here on the 25th, and I'll not be in New York anymore, but you have this chance, and please grab it. That is something that is not to be missed. And yeah, Vera Pavlova, Marina Temkina, Tatiana Zamirovskaya, whose latest book I am hoping to read soon. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. And we'll read sort of a sequence coming from our latest book, because for me, Sasha's translations are always performing this mesmerizing trick of giving a book an entirely new life. It is like having a beautiful twin you recognize, and simultaneously you're thinking, wow, that's a good line. As if it did not belong to me anymore. And it is a liberating feeling, because you are letting the lines go somewhere else, and you know well enough that on the other side someone is going to catch them and make them more beautiful and more alive. Sasha, thank you for that. So shall we do what you do? Sitting, standing. Okay. Just for us to know, does everyone in the audience understand some Russian? No.
No.
Yes. Yes. Okay. And let's start with English.
We'll start with English. What a winter. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. What a winter, towering in the yards.
A little louder, please.
What a winter, towering in the yards, like an oak, like a stump, like a shrine. Airborne particles of frost ash, tiny cavalry officers circling the guilty head, diving on its very dome. Time for hibernation. As an undone corpse subsides where it is slain, inexorable as the gathering pace of a train, lie then where you are laid, for the rules are already made. There was once a hare and once a vixen, and they lived by the deep blue sea. First they lived in an ancient dugout, but then they both built homes. The vixen built a house of ice, and I've heard the hares was of mica, built from timid hare tears and sad cabbage saliva. And so they lived in harmony, hare and fox. On holy days, they set off fireworks.
А зима такая стоит по дворам, как дуб, как сруб, как храм. Летучие фракции снежного праха пикируют кавалеристами на повинную голову, на самую ее маковку. Пора в зимнюю спячку, как труп разъятый, в пустыне лежатый, как остановите вагоновожатый, как положено лежать где уложено. Жил-был заяц со своей лисицей у самого синего моря. Они жили в ветхой землянке, потом построили домы. У лисы стала избушка ледяная, у зайца, говорят, слюдяная, из чистых заячьих слезок, из грустной слюны капустной. Жили-жили, никого не ели, на праздники пускали фейерверки.
I had a dream. In my dream, a table, and on it lay the most wondrous youth, and he was arrayed in palest attire, sable shroud. Look, little mother, most gracious majesty, my marble-hewn hero, my own darling, quite beyond compare. How I love you. Wait and see.
Видела сон, стол, а на том столе не стоял, но лежал прекрасный человек, и на нем было надето одежда серая, соболем опушенная. Матушка, всемилостивая государыня, мраморный мой красавец, мой голубчик, бесценный и беспримерный, право, крупно люблю тебя, сам смотри.
Then everything went to sleep. The wind in the chimney, the fire in the hearth, and an ache in her head and the water in the tap. Then everything stopped still. The hairdresser at the end of a shift in her overalls, her legs stretched out, eyes half shut, and the homeless man in the stationary tram, and traffic lights switched to amber. And in the winter, and in the winter air, the police batons, and the yellow sky supported by pillars of smoke, and people in furs, in hats, in police vans, and people apprehended at their registered address, their almost transparent houseplants, their speechless domestic animals, their warm clothes, their cold drinks. We, wrapped in snow for safekeeping, like pictures overlaid with glassine, suddenly came to a stop.
Тут-то все и уснуло. И ветер в трубе, и огонь в очаге, и боль в голове, и в кране вода. Тут-то все и застыло. И парикмахерша в халате после смены, вытянув ноги, глаза полузакрыв, и бездомный, восстановившимся трамваем, и светофор, едва зажегший желтый свет, и в зимнем воздухе дубинки полицейских, и небо желтое, подпертое столбами пара, и люди в шубах, шапках, автозаках, и люди, находящиеся по месту жительства, с полупрозрачными домашними растениями, с неговорящими домашними животными, с вещами теплыми, с напитками холодными. Мы, переложенные снегом для сохранности, как папиросную бумагу картинки, вдруг стали стоп. Как вспомню, как собирался на пожизненное, тогда первый раз во мне закоченела душа, будто знала, чему теперь ей пора учиться. И жена плачет, и друзей двое, кто посмелее, а дочка в отъезде вернется, а меня нет, и уже светает, а я полночи жег документы и рукописи, ни одежды не взял, ни рабов не выбрал в дорогу, как вспомню, и сразу уже на корабле море вокруг, и на палубе тоже море, кормчи молят, царев вот, мат матросов, хлещет в ноздри волна, а я, знай, пишу, поглядим, кто раньше устанет, буря ли, жалоба.
I remember when I was packing to leave for life. That first time I felt my spirit dumb within me, as if it knew what it would now have to learn. And my wife wept, and my two friends, the bravest ones. But my daughter was away. She'd come home to find me gone. Dawn broke, and half the night spent burning manuscripts and documents. I took no clothes. I chose no slaves to take with me. When I think back, I find myself already on that ship, the sea all around me, the sea on the decks. The helmsman prays, the water roars, sailors swear, my nostrils fill with waves, but I write on. Let's see what tires first, the storm or my appeal. How did we come to be in this wardrobe? How did I come to be in this coffin? We aren't alone in the wardrobe. Ancient shaggy pelts, a frozen fleece hung with icicles, fur coats with deep, dark shawls. You're lost in them, we're lost, as in a forest. The dreadful smell of chill, nightfall, the snow marked by the pox.
В стороне чужой дальней, гроб качается хрустальный, снег валит, горит звезда, ходит гроб туда-сюда над землей пустого места, спит во льду твоя невеста. Снится Мари Штальбаум, что она в глубоком колодце, в рукаве папашиной шубы. Тесно, темно, пахнет нафталином, шуршит шелковая подкладка, по стенкам банки с летним малиновым вареньем, белый, белый свет в конце туннеля, лесенка круче и круче, ступеньки реже и реже.
The steps fewer and fewer. Tatiana lied in the dreams that she's running out to meet you, but the earth has long grown cold. The colonnaded house, knee-deep in the heat snow. The path gone, the road under drifts that reach to the steeple's cross. No headstones anymore. The churchyard full, and the rosy tint of the snow, pale as drugget, opened over the plain. No, we can't take the sleigh and ride out to the pine woods for tea with Mr. Bear.
Не сядем в санки, не поедем в лес еловый ужинать с медведем. Снятся Овидию в томах римские белые гуси. Снится тете Томе Кузнецовой наступление жизни образцовой. Если у вас в мегаполисе еще помнят обо мне ссыльном, знай, кто спросит. Я умер, едва приговор огласили. Мертвый живу, хожу, тело донашиваю, оно послушное ссыхается на костях. Я здесь чужак, варвар, языка не носитель, небо коптитель, волосы стали белые, мертвыми губами учу детскую грамоту. Мертвыми ногами топчу твердую воду. Что тебе рассказать, чтоб не скучала? Скачут кони по гладкой реке, и стрелы летают. Рыбы торчат изо льда с открытыми ртами. Некому их вынимать, некому меня понимать. Вино замерзло, стоит само без кувшина. Кусок вина отломлю и сосу, как сиську. Яблок не достать, ты бы меня не узнала. Местные замотаны в шкуры, на тогу косятся, только лица и видно, да и те в бороде, даже звезды здесь не как у людей.
If you in the megalopolis remember me still, the exiled one, know this, I died as my sentence was spoken. I live like the dead, I wear my body thin, pliant, it shrinks to my bones. I'm an outsider here, a barbarian, deaf to the language, an idler, my hair white at my temples. I mouth the Getic tongue with dead lips. With dead legs, I stamp the stiffened water. What can I tell you, my wife, to lessen your pain? How horses gallop over the smooth river, arrows are let loose. How fish cling fast bound in the ice, their mouths agape, and there is no one to free them, nor to understand me. The wine freezes and stays in its shape, even without the jug. I break a small fragment and suck on it like a nipple. There are no apples. You wouldn't recognize me now. The locals are wrapped up in pelts with only their faces uncovered, but they wear thick beards. They look askance at my toga. Even the stars here are not mine.
Матушка, всемилостивая государыня, друг милый и бесценный, душа моя милая, голубчик родной, Гяур, Москов, Козак Яицкий, Пугачев, индейский петух, павлин, кот заморский, фазан золотой, тигр, лев в тростнике. Тебе подобного нету, и на всех плевать.
Little mother, most gracious majesty, dearest invaluable friend, my own sweet darling, cherished soul, Gior, Muscovite, Yaik Cossack, Pugachev, turkey cock, peacock, tomcat from over the seas, golden pheasant, lion, tiger in a reed bed, you are beyond compare. I spit on the rest.
Все, как есть, помню. Ничего не забыл. И что сегодня в городе день поэзии. Сам-то я разучился. Стихи — игрушка счастливых, которым нравится ладить себя несчастными. А все равно. Подумаешь, как все вы там, туда-сюда на поэтические чтения. Алкоголь в горле, венки еще свежи, и ни одного, кто прервал бы исповедальную лирику, поставил рюмку на стол и «А как там на зон?» Или хотя бы «Давайте выпьем за тех, кто в море». И хочется плеваться мерзлыми ямбами, тупыми, как наконечники здешних стрел, единственной на весь край сувенирной продукции.
I remember everything just as it was, and even that today is Poetry Day in the city. I've lost the art myself. Poems are the toys of the fortunate who like to play at misfortune. But still, thinking of you all rushing about, from one poetry reading to the next, the taste of wine in your mouths, your wreaths still green, not one of you would stem the tide of confessional lyric, slam your glass down on the table to ask, how's our mate Naso getting on? Or even, here's to all those at sea. Oh, how I'd like to spit a few frozen iambs, blunt as the points of arrows in these parts, the only souvenirs manufactured around here.
Рожков? Как-нибудь так. Вместо того, чтобы выйти из шкафа, люди ходят в шкафу и оказываются в другом месте. Или они только заглянули в шкаф и слышат, как за спиной проворачивается ключ, и вот они уже в другом месте под носами тапок утренний снег. Или так, они никогда не знали, что это шкаф, пока дверца не захлопнулась, медленно рассвело и стало ясно, что вот мы в другом месте, и над нами сыплется нафталин. На городских площадях, на улицах города пусто так, словно война, словно революция, словно эпидемия, словно финал чемпионата мира. И над ними идет утренний снег. Нынче видно все, и что все одновременно. В каждой квартире гореет свет. Одновременно. Каждый в своем шкафу садится за стол, поливает плющ, встает, садится, ложится, не гасит свет, сияет в окне ослепительно сонной лампой, как девушки в витринах красных кварталов, перед которыми нет никого, улицы пустые, и над ними сыплется нафталин.
A little like this, instead of coming out of the closet, they crowd in the cupboard and find themselves in another place. Or they only went briefly into the wardrobe, but heard the key turn behind them, and now they're in another place. The morning snow under the tips of their slippers. Or perhaps they didn't even know it was a wardrobe until the door slammed shut, the light slowly grew, and it was suddenly clear. We're in another place. Naphthalene sprinkling down from above, emptiness like war, like revolution on the city squares and in the streets, like an epidemic or the World Cup final, and the morning snow falling from above. Now everything can be seen, and everything at the same time. A light glows in every apartment. At the same time, each man in his closet sits at his table, waters his houseplants, stands, sits, lies, leaves the light burning, shines blinding bright like a lamp in the small hours, like the girls in the windows of red light districts, with no one to see them. The streets are empty, and the naphthalene falls slowly.
Одинаковые, обрюзгшие, тяжкие, как животы. В воздухе стояли воздушные шары, воздушные шкафы на невидимых нитках, в каждом никого не веселящий газ. В темной воде, состоящей из льда и воды, возвышались этажи фосфорисцирующих рыб. В зимнем небе, состоящем из неба и снега, светились окна многоквартирных домов, пустые, товарами полные магазины, рестораны со стульями, прислоненными к столам, учреждения с прошлогодними календарями, забытыми на странице с мартовской девушкой, и над ними шел утренний свет. Иногда на лед выходили фавны, опушенные смуглой шерсткой на тонких копытцах, стесняющиеся лишний раз отпечаток раздвоенный ставить на белые.
Lonely, bloated, drooping like paunches, these balloons hanging in the air, aerial wardrobes on invisible strings, filled with unlaughing gas. In dark water made of ice and water rose the many stories of phosphorescent fish. In the winter sky made of snow and sky gleamed the windows of many-storied buildings, empty shops piled high with goods, restaurants with the chairs leant against the tables, offices with last year's calendar fixed on the page with March's girl, and from above fell the morning light. Sometimes fawns came out onto the ice, downy dark wool on thin little hooves, fearing to leave too many cloven prints on the white.
На меня разгневалось божество. Я совершил оплошность. Какую не скажу, какую совершил ошибку и где я. Вот я, тут я. Лучше не навлекать на себя гнев того, что мощью равен богам, так что, если вы навлечете на себя его гнев, можно только надеяться, что и милостью он тоже богам равен. Каким именно? Кто из богов отличался особой милостью? Я совершил оплошность, ошибку. По ошибке я оплошность совершил, какую не знаю, только догадываться могу, что ту же, что и этот, и этот, я не буду их называть по имени, это было бы непростительной оплошностью. Даже в моей непрошенной, непрощенной новой земле я любил город, и чтобы весной толпа вдруг вся на легком, дачные диваны, когда занавески дышат, себя, когда я с тобой. Это была ошибка. Я была ошибка, какая, не знаю. И вокруг меня люди с холодным оружием. И ни за какие деньги не найдешь корректора.
The Godhead is angry with me. I made an error, I can't say what. What it was, I can't say, an error. And where now? Here. Better not to attract the anger of one whose power is equal with that of the gods. And if you do attract his anger, better hope that his mercy is also equal with that of the gods. But which gods? Which of the gods was noted for mercy? I made an error, a mistake, and by mistake I erred. But what was my error, I don't know. Can only guess that maybe it was the same error that another committed. And another too. I won't name them here because that would be unforgivable, an unforgivable mistake. Even in my unearned and errant new world, I loved the city, the spring, the sudden crowds promenading, the divan in the summer house where the curtains breathed, myself when I was with you. It was an error. I was amiss, a mistake mistook me, yet did I err. Around me, men wearing cold weapons, and nowhere, not for any money, can I find a proofreader.
А что делать еще, когда ничего не поделаешь? Мы поем, как потеем. Такое устройство. Каторжники поют, дальнобойщики поют, грузчики. Швея за машинкой что-то бубнит себе под нос, ну и я тоже. Сам себе пою, сам себя читаю. Иногда думаю, ай да сукин сын. Или сегодня я гений. Я уже старый, седой как колос, а все за свое. Будто не стихи меня загнали на крайний север. Будто тем, кто не отвечает на мои письма, есть дело до тех, кто поет, чтобы не сдохнуть. Будто литература – важнейшее из искусств. И сам кесарь, прежде чем отойти ко сну, спрашивает референта, есть ли новости от Назона. И что он там пишет в своем Воронеже?
And what to do when you can do nothing? We sing and we sweat, both bodily functions. Convicts sing, long-distance truckers, loaders, a seamstress at her machine sings under her breath, as I do. I sing to myself, I read myself to myself. Sometimes I think, you nailed it, you bastard, or I'm a genius. I'm old, but I keep going, grey, but I'm still at it, as if it wasn't my poems that got me holed up in the far north, as if those who never answered my letters took an interest in those who sang, wanting them kept alive, as if literature was indeed the most vital of all the arts, and Caesar himself, before retiring to his chambers, would ask his secretary, any news from Naso? What's he scribbling in that Voronezh of his?
And now a few female voices that were performed by Ovid in his Heroids, or mentioned by himself in the Metamorphoses, sort of a remake or cover version, let's say. D. No. Кто ты был? Ты беженец был. Забыл, как звали. И откуда сам семья на закорках. Сын захребетник писается в штаны. Отец одно и то же про то, как его уважали в Совете ветеранов. Утал ты падежи, глаза в прищур, дрожь за пазухой. Если бы не я и мое поставленное хозяйство, и не вдовий мой капитал, где ты был бы ли? Когда с тобой легла, я легла как в лодку, как в зимнее море легла, и вот помалу научилась различать сквозь твое дырявое днище и тяжелый ход морских чудищ, и остовы затонувших судов круизных, и гром мотора, когда пограничный катер требует руки на борт и не сопротивляться, и я не сопротивлялась. Но мы уперлись в дно. Ты вышел на сушу под новыми созвездиями, сбросил плавники, отрастил легкие, оставил меня в песке, бывшее дерево, бывшую царицу, бывшую лодку, и если хочу за тобой угнаться, я должна стать огнем и воздухом, как та египтянка, чтобы ты хотел и не мог выгнать из ноздрей мой запах.
D. You, whoever you were, a refugee, forgot your name or even where you came from, carried on your family's back, little piss pants, your father always on about how he was once some big shot in the veterans' office, you mixing up your words, narrowing your gaze a cut below. If it hadn't been for me and my strip of farmed land, my widow's capital, where would you have been? Would you even have been? What if I lay with you? When I lay with you, I lay as if in a small boat, as if in the winter sun I lay, and slowly learnt to see, through the wreck of your hull, the slow procession of sea monsters, the hulks of sunken cruise ships, the thrum of the motor as immigration draws alongside, demanding all hands on deck and no resistance, and I showed no resistance. But still we went down, and you emerged onto dry land under different constellations. You lost your fins, grew lungs, and left me there in the sand, driftwood, drift queen, drifting boat, and if I want to give chase to catch you, I must make myself to fire and air like the Egyptian, so the smell of me clings in your nostrils, and you wish to dispel it, but can't.
Пу. Хотелось бы все-таки знать, какую форму ты примешь там, где формы давно сношены, тела сданы на переплавку, никто никого не помнит, и тебя нельзя узнать по когтям твоего льва. Когда мы были вдвоем, мы были кто захочешь. Как скажешь, так и были. Счастливая наша флюидность заполняла, как море, все отверстия тела. Я была генерал и одновременно птичка. Генерал и армия. Генеральша и самовар. А ты — лев с когтем, девочка с прялкой, рядовой на гауптвахте, мокрый подгузник, жук-навозник, движимый праздник. Ты носил мою юбку. Я носила твой камуфляж. Я перестала брить ноги. Ты писал сидя, травестируя этим властные отношения, плюя на гендер с его полыми половинками, успевая побыть попеременно, одновременно папой, мамой, кленом и рябиной, генералом и птичкой, но никогда просто тобой и мной, пожилым офицером в провинциальном городе и изобретательной дамочкой из местных. Вот эта тактика и облегчила нам расставание, и я уверенно рассчитываю не узнать тебя там.
Oh, it would be good to know what form you'll take in that place where all the forms have been worn to death and bodies surrendered for recasting. No one recognizes anyone. Even you are no longer known by the claws on your lion pelt. When we were together, we were whatever we wanted to be. You only had to say, and that's how it was, our blithe fluidity entering all the body's openings like the sea. I was a general and a fluttering bird all at once, a general and an army, generalissima and samovar, and you were a lion with its claws, a girl at her spinning wheel, hoplite at the Hauptwache, wet nappy, dung beetle, movable feast. You wore my skirt, I wore your fatigues, I stopped shaving my legs, you pissed sitting down. So we travestied all the workings of power, screwed gender its two halves hollowed, and we, simultaneous and plural, took turns at mummy and daddy, maple and quick beam, general and bird, but never just you and me, an elderly officer in a provincial backwater and a little local woman blessed with inventiveness. Such tactics eased our parting. And I'm confident I won't recognize you there.
И девочки мои говорят, бедная И, о, какая муха тебя укусила, милая. Мой Эмче говорит, малыш или моя маленькая. Его бывшая говорит, это или его тёлка. Я почти не нахожу в себе качеств, совпадающих с этими определениями. Последние месяцы я не нахожу в себе места. Перехожу из бара в бар. Мне там тесно. Стреляю сигареты у продуктовых. Обхожу дозором заснеженные помойки, словно собираю бутылки или ищу венский стул. Дальше больше. Деревянные скамьи электричек, пригородные полустанки, бурый наст натоптан, овраги бурелом, колодец с бумажной иконкой, заколоченный клуб, кафе-морячок, коровник, чешется кровь под кожей, наружу хочет. Тесно тут, небо низко, поля мало, хочется бежать. Куда, сама не знаю, запрокинув голову, движениями крупа, разгоняя мушиное щекотание крови, сильными ногами пожирая километры, без памяти, без устали, без остановки, на вольной воле размыкивая песню про Иву, без музыки, без слов, только ау и ио.
The girls all say of me, poor I-O. What's biting you, darling? My boy calls me his babe, his girl, his ex calls me it or that cow. But I see in myself almost nothing of what they ascribe to me. The last few months, I've been beside myself, wandering from bar to bar, from high to low. I scrounge cigarettes from shopkeepers, stand watch over frozen rubbish dumps, as if I were collecting empty bottles or looking for bentwood chairs. I blunder on wooden benches in railway carriages. Little halts in the suburbs with the trampled snow blackened, then abysses, blizzard-bent boughs, a well crowned with a cardboard icon, a boarded-up club, a beat-up cafe, a cattle trough. The blood itches under my pelt, desperate to get out. Even here, there's no room for me. Low sky, few fields. I want to run. I don't even know where to. I throw back my head and sway my haunches to rid myself of the tickling gadfly of my bloodstream. My strong legs bear the long miles ceaselessly, unwearyingly, obliviously, and free-willed I bellow the song about willow. No words, no tunes, just lowing, I-oing.
And yeah, to speeden up, the last two poems in the book, we're reading just the excerpts, but that is the finale. Дело всегда оборачивается зимою. Все дороги утыкаются прямо в нее. 35-летний итальянец, заблудившийся в темной чаще, встретит волшебного помощника, как положено в волшебной сказке, но все равно будет спускаться ниже и ниже, впитывая, как губка, то, что увидит, пока не окажется там, где все замерзает, и губка тоже.
Things always happen in winter. All roads lead to it. A 35-year-old Italian man lost in a dark wood meets a magic helper, as is customary in a fairy tale. But all the same, he descends lower and lower, soaking up all he sees like a sponge.
Слишком умный, слишком ехидный. Как положено в пору пубертата, мальчик, сколько ему лет мы не знаем, встречает 5-е время года – зиму, у которой нет ни стен, ни крыши, ни умопостигаемого предела. Один раз она его уже поцеловала. Она дала ему щедрое обещание, некоторое количество ледяных, синей зеленью отливающих букв, пригоршню замерзших голосов, сколько-то плоских историй. Если ты из них сложишь что-нибудь, хоть сколько-нибудь длительное, что-то иммунное к течению времени, к низким температурам и заразе, гуляющей в восточном ветре, то будешь сам себе господин. Весь свет будет твой. Тебя понесут на руках, да не приткнешься о камень ногою твоею, и я еще раз тебя поцелую. Пару норвежских коньков подарю в придачу. Главное, чтобы получилось складно. И он забыл и Герду, и бабушку, и всех домашних, и сидит на льду, перебирая свое богатство.
Lower than the very
Окей.
lower than the very depths, lower than the deepest deep. At a point lower than human misery, the Italian saw a frozen lake, and those who were frozen within like fish scaled with icy tears, eyes that protruded sharp ice needles, and speech that could neither be gnawed at nor thawed. These are the traitors. They are beyond forgiveness. What have we betrayed so that there can be no forgiveness for us? There are no walls, no roof, only the northern lights, and a few shared histories, opened anew like little doors. Wind, the blue of the mountains invisible in the twilight, under winter stars. Our little house is covered in snow. I hear the dogs barking by the village gates. Through snow and wind, someone is coming home. Foreign words melt in the cheek, like sugar cubes.
И он забыл и Герду, бабушку, и всех домашних, и сидит на льду, перебирая свое богатство ниже дна, ниже днища. В самой нижней точке низкого человечьего горя итальянец видит замерзшее озеро и тех, кто вмерзли в него, как рыбы, в чешуе из ледяных слез, с глазами, отрастившими острые иглы, с речью, какую не разгрызть и не отогреть. Это предатели, те, кому нет прощения. Кого мы предали так, что нам нет прощения? Нет ни стен, ни крыши, только северное сияние и некоторое количество общих историй, открывающихся вовне, как дверцы. Вечер. Не видно в сумерках синих гор. Под зимними звездами. Весь в снегу стоит наш домик маленький. Слышу, как лают собаки у деревенских ворот. Через ветер и снег кто-то идет домой. За щекой слова чужие тают, как рафинат. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's absolutely exhilarating to hear this in both languages. Before we open the discussion and before Alexandra, thank you for passing the microphone around. So if you have a question, please use the mic. I will ask my first question, but let me also just warn you that this gate through which you walked in may be closed by now. So if you need to leave, please take the elevator to the 3rd floor and walk out through the library. It's possible. Sorry about this, it's Friday night at Carcanet. So once again, thank you. Let me just ask the first question, which perhaps may be a forbidden question, if I may. And maybe this question is more for Sasha than for Masha. If translation is the best way to read the original, as they put it, and since you've collaborated with Masha on the English translations of her works for many years, for a number of years, I actually don't know exactly when you started, what do you think has changed in Masha's poetry since 22, or not poetry, in what has changed in her writing since 2022? Having to do perhaps, or not having to do anything, with kind of a geographical reorientation of that kind. And for Masha, I guess, to paraphrase the same question, what has it meant for you in the past almost 3 years already? Thank you.
That's a really interesting question, and without the sort of thing that I could spend days thinking about.
You have something?
Yeah. I hope you weren't going to say that. I was going to leave by the 3rd floor in the library. Well, I should say a few things. First of all, that I've been translating Maria since 2011, 2012, I think.
I guess yes, yeah. Maybe 2010, the first.
Yes,
okay.
yeah. And there have been changes in her poetics over that period. I don't think that you would disagree with that. The sort of changes that you see in poets working through their career and coming. I think some of the poetry that I first worked on was particularly formal, and that intense formality has dissipated, and its formality is used much more in a much more, well, for me, exciting way now. I think that's something that I've noticed. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm not a fan of formal poetry, but it's really lovely to see things happening and changing. I haven't translated a great deal of Maria's work since 2022 because of circumstances, writing circumstances, translating circumstances, and I'm only now working on her novel, which was written after 2022. So it's a little hard to answer that particular part of the question. The preoccupations changed. One thing that has changed is that work from before that is now very hard to publish, that might be said, but that's not a question about the writing. That's more about the circumstances of publication and dissemination. So not perhaps a very full answer, but it's something I need to think about a great deal. Would you agree with what I said?
Yes, I was going to ask you, Masha, to confirm or...
Well, that's a tricky question because actually I did not, if we're talking about poetry, I did not write much over these 3 years because of all the obvious things. After the full-scale invasion of Russia into Ukraine, if you write in Russian language, it involves a serious amount of self-questioning. And I mean not only the substance or the subjects or the sort of a background for your own voice, but the voice itself. I was always thinking that in contemporary poetry, it is especially important to know the exact spot you are standing. You might be having doubts, problems with all the other things, but you have to know, you have to feel a mental map and to use the location service to be able to find the right place for this moment and this voice. And nowadays nothing seems right, not the place where you're standing, not that elusive something you're striving for. So you're sending the text message, the voice message from the point A to point B, but both the points are ghostly. And that is a bit buggy. What I mean is, during these 3 years, I have written. I started writing a poetry sequence that up to now, it was published a few months ago, but even up to now, I feel that it does not have a right ending. And again, for obvious reasons, to have this liberating change, a sudden shift in the last part, it was supposed to be consisting of 3 parts. Something should be changing around me and inside myself maybe as well, but I was looking outwards in order to find something, and it did not happen. And at some point I decided that I will publish the sequence without an end as a monument to a failure, maybe. Since then I did not write much except another cycle that is not relevant for this conversation. And you might well say that the solution I found for myself was switching to prose, which is a different craft. It has a different temporality, and it has been a huge relief, almost either a space, a safe space, or an escape room, maybe both, maybe neither, but yeah, it worked for me.
Thank you. And if I may just throw in another question. You probably had in mind Fokus, of course, when you said you switched to prose. Which
I was also writing and finishing another prose book, a big, sort of a novel
But in Fokus, which already exists in Russian and in German and maybe in any other languages, and to increase suspense and anticipation for the English language translation, this is precisely what happens. The protagonist is going to a place which she never arrives at, namely not the end of the poem, as you were saying you were looking for that point B, ultimate destination, but a poetry festival, which is not exactly. So is that, you called it a safe space, is that also for you now you feel in these new circumstances and geographical whereabouts? Is that a continuation of poetry, or is it rather the opposite of that?
A continuation of?
Of your poems, of writing poetry?
Well, I cannot say much. I cannot say much about this thing that we are modestly calling the circumstances. Well, because for me, I mean,
The lack of the
yeah,
geographical.
for the lack of a decent word, of course, absolutely. But well, with me, it was always the same. I think that is just the way I write. There is a huge question of or a problem, something, a sort of a void that I'm trying to explore or to regard it as a question that needs to be answered. And then I'm making circles around that, sending that voice message from the point A into the middle of the void, and sometimes getting a reply, sometimes not. In different forms, using different methods for formulating the question. And when I was reading these excerpts from the Holy Winter, which was written before the invasion in the winter season 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, it was interesting to me. It's been a long time since I was rereading these poems, and it was interesting to see that some of the analogies that I'm using now for myself in Focus or just in my, with my thinking machine, some analogies that I'm using to explain the situation, the circumstances, or the way we're trying to process what had happened. I'm finding them in this book about an entirely different state, a different state of existence. I mean, a different catastrophe, which does not even seem a catastrophe when you are watching backwards. So yeah, maybe it means that I have to renew my my pack of cards, so to speak, because can you answer contemporary questions with the old images, or maybe there is a reason for them to be coming back again and again. I don't know.
Thanks. Let's hear more questions, and as our tradition goes, the first one always goes to a student. There, thank you.
I have a question.
Just wait for the mic, please.
Is it on?
Is it switched on?
It is switched on, but I can't
Okay.
tell. I didn't think it was working before either.
I think you can
Just project your voice.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that I love the writing, the imagery, the descriptions. It was just very imaginative, and I could see the scenery in my head. But like while listening to the poem, there was like a lot of talk of seasons and like temperature, mostly what to do with the frigid temperatures or winter. And I was wondering if that had anything to do with any themes or mood or with anything else within your poem.
Thank you for the question, and actually, my apologies for not starting with some introductory sentences, because basically the book is describing, it is dealing with an idea of never-ending winter as a place that is also a time, the season that never expires, and is becoming a place of exile. So there is a number of different voices involved. Some of them are remakes, paraphrases, radical translations of different writers, from Ovid's exile poems to some Chinese poems, in particular English translations, and one of the main threads that are going through the poem is a story about frozen words. That is a plot that is traveling through the world literature, as you know, across the centuries, from you name it, from the Renaissance writers to the 18th century English essayists, from the German tales of Baron Munchausen to, that is a sort of a ongoing dialogue between the centuries and writing voices. But the idea is that in certain temperatures that I am aligning maybe with a state of oppression, winter as a state of existence, state of mind that someone is imposing on you, like in C.S. Lewis's Narnia, where the evil queen is announcing winter as an ultimate, never-ending time, so you're not supposed to be expecting Christmas. Waiting for the Christmas is becoming a criminal offense, because Christmas means that time is not stopped. Yeah, you have something to look forward to, and you're not supposed to be looking forward. It is that never-ending time present. And I was writing it at the time of the pandemic, but I think that it corresponds or, talks about, a certain political frame that is becoming more and more dominant all across the globe.
First of all, thank you so much. It's not working, right?
It is.
It's working. Thank you so much once again for both the originals and the translations as original in their own right. I wanted to dwell on Ovid. This is a 2021 poem, if I understand correctly. Do you feel as inclined to turn to Roman imagery after 2022? For instance, Marina has Nineveh, this collection, and there's a drive to turn to the east. So how do Roman analogies work for you nowadays with regard to Russia? Is this type of voice, does it feel no longer applicable, or is it still applicable but in different way? For instance, I'm thinking of the English Civil War and Andrew Marvell thinking of Lucan, something like that. Thank you.
It's very interesting, and maybe Sasha, I'll answer, but maybe you want to comment on that, because that's an interesting question in general, not only applied to this book, but to poetry in general, and the way the empire images, the empire structures are being questioned, reconsidered, challenged. What do you?
Well, I can say a few things. I can start by saying a few things. I suppose there's one strategy which is perhaps quite a radical strategy, although maybe at first sight it doesn't appear so radical, which is to use the frames of reference that have always existed and have come to be the basis for what we write and how we think, and to subvert those or to sabotage them, and in doing so to provoke a shift. And I don't know, I can't speak for Maria, but personally that's always been my approach in poetry and not in translation obviously, but in poetry, to sabotage rather than to look to another set of references which might appear on the surface to be washed of oppressive histories, but often turn out to be more of the same.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and yeah, I have just one maybe thing to add. I have a deep fear of historical analogies. I think that they are tossed around again and again for the last, well, at least in the Russian-speaking world, but not only in the Russian-speaking world, again and again for the last 15, 20 years, and one gets used to someone writing on Facebook, for instance, well, is it already 1937 or 1933, meaning at which stage of, well, Soviet history or German history, I don't know why, but in the Russian hemisphere, one is always comparing oneself to these, sort of narratives that are considered to be grand. Not the other diasporas, not the other catastrophes, but these two as something exemplary and, relatable. Whatever. And I always think that that there is something entirely humiliating, self-humiliating, in the frame of mind that insists on being somewhere for the second, third, innumerable time. But sometimes, life is making a joke on us, and nowadays I'm finding I suddenly feel that the whole historical process, at least in Russia, but maybe elsewhere, is becoming more and more of a tautology. Not because history repeats itself, but because someone or a general zeitgeist is insisting on redoing some chapters of the past in precisely the same way, or almost the same way. Well, it is a memorial approach, which means that you are supposed to have in mind somewhere that it is a fiction. It is not the past as it used to be. It's an idealized past, which even more scary. So this voluntary repetitiveness, this tautology of history, is something that poses an enormous problem. I feel dragged back into the 20th century. And it makes me now more and more weary of all the pre-existing structures of thinking. And of course, it could be natural to be comparing Putin's Russia or the Soviet Union with the Roman Empire, and we know a bunch of authors that were working with it. But do we have to do, or do we have to find a new answer for a new political situation even if the situation itself is pretending to be something well known and understandable, maybe the goal is to understand it in a different way, from a different angle.
Thank you.
Let me just ask, I just can't help it. Isn't what you described poetry a rhyme that is never the same, but works with the something that sounds similar and makes it different?
Maybe, yeah, thanks.
Yes, please.
I have a question for the
Microphone, sorry.
translator. I'll just project that. I'll yell. Thanks. How do you deal with quotations or things that are very familiar in Russian? I'm thinking of «У самого синего моря» или «За тех, кто в море», etc. And how do you deal with these? If you just translate them, they make a lot of sense, but they don't ring bells. And how do you deal with that?
I don't have a particular translation theory for it. I just come to each one on a case
Of
by
course,
case.
well, we all do that. Yeah, right.
And in the case of the book before, War of the Beasts and the Animals, that was where the work was completely steeped in allusion and
That's right,
quotation. I made decisions, I mean, again, but in a very, very case by
Verse by
case.
verse, yeah.
One of the things that is, I suppose, important to me, and I have to keep in mind, is how the English sounds. So whether, you know, of course you're balancing everything, but whether I can still, whether I can keep it in a sort of, keep it with a poetic rhythm that compels,
Yeah.
and keeps the reader going.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much all for your reading. I should speak loudly. And for the poetry, of course. I have a question to Masha. In many poems before, right, you were writing through the voices of the others. You were creating some personas. Here in this collection, in Holy Winter, you read from it, you have these personas that are, as you said, a remake of Ovid's Harry, right? But they are not exactly the same. Harry's, of course, they're very much modernized and what's not. But you are hiding their names. It doesn't say Didon, it says D, right? It doesn't say Ariadne, you say A, or not Omphale, but O. And so, why are you doing this?
Because the late great poet and friend Grigory Dashevsky once was talking about his way of writing literary reviews. It was just a conversation, and at some point he used this phrase. He said, "Потому что цитаты никто не обязан знать," because no one has to know and recognize the quotations. And for me it rings the bell. I don't think that quotations or pre-existing forms or stories are there in my stuff, and they are everywhere in my stuff. It is always, or almost always, a choir where my own voice is not the leading one. It is just a voice amongst the others. And it is important for me to have this multiplicity, to have this combination of different voices, different presences. But I don't mean to point out a certain line in Ovid. As you can see in the Holy Winter, when it comes to the Ovid translations, not to the hero, it's not to the women parts, but women's voices, but to the Ovid himself, to the Exponent and Tristia. It is not really a translation. What I'm doing is contaminating, but all the references, all the things are having a certain initial presence in Ovid's own text. So it is a way of condensing, maybe, and also distorting or changing certain things. I don't mean to be writing a commentary or even to be, wrestling with Ovid, who was, that's actually an interesting situation, the way Heroids is the first ever attempt to be giving voice to historical or mythological heroines. But of course, the person who is giving voice to them is a man. So it is a highly ironic situation. You are speaking with imaginary female voices from the name of these women in the name of these women. But of course, the diction, the voice is ambivalent, to say the least. But I'm not trying, to wrestle with these texts, trying to insist on my own version. I think it is, informed with the previous text, and maybe is hoping to inform it in a way of a backward reading.
I think I'm loud. But, okay, I will be even louder. I'm not sure. About quotations, what Masha is brilliant for me, and I didn't get Chinese quotations. They're completely beyond.
You're not supposed to.
Yeah, exactly.
There is a bunch of other things that embedded.
But for me, suddenly C.S. Lewis and Anderson, my cup of tea. Wow, because that I didn't expect. I would expect Chinese quotation, even I would not be able to get them. And what you're doing and how you're doing it, and that's I don't know how to ask that, but how you're capable of marrying Ovid and C.S. Lewis, that's just brilliant. And if you have any comments on that, I would be happy.
Мне.
Oh, okay.
Whatever. Thank you. I don't know what to answer, but it might be that. The comment I might provide is for quite a while I was writing the book sitting. Now it feels pretty nostalgic. In the middle of nowhere, 80 kilometers from Moscow, winter time, dacha, whatever, and at some point one day was melting into another, not making a difference, and I was reading Ovid, and then at some point I started, not collecting, but sort of putting together different strands of winter writing, let's say, and with a special attention to the story of frozen words. And at some point I had an enormous list of beautiful things, beautiful stories, and I was not able to use I'm using maybe a quarter of the actual imaginary list, because there is so many and they are so beautiful and they're so different from one another. but still the idea of having a voice, having a sentence, having a song or a bark of a fox are present and solidified, something that you can hold in your palm for a while until it melts, or like with Rabelais, the frozen curse words, golden and green, that are that you can keep forever, and then in the moment of sudden warmth, you're able to hear the words. So yeah, I had to. It was. I cannot say it was a hard choice. I'm still. Well, I'm a bit sad that I could not use the some of them, but that's a matter of, I don't know, some musical form, inner form you have to fill out from the inside like a puzzle, and so certain pieces fit, and some of them just don't.
It's really difficult to speak about poetry. It's difficult to speak about poetry. It's always difficult to speak about poetry because we are not speaking in the adequate language. But what I'm interested about this poem, the part of it which is like its error, ошибка, оплошность, because prior to that there is this narrative like kaleidoscope of inside the restricted, controlled, maybe by winter, maybe by pandemic, maybe by some other things like exile or whatever, the condition of the refugee, right? So we kind of like this kaleidoscope from Ovid to that, to this, like recognizable, not recognizable, right? Like images, etc. Associative, right? And then it comes to this almost like self-investigation. Like, I made a mistake, oh my God, I made a mistake, ошибка, оплошность. And then after that, I think that you are speaking more on a person. There is I. This is what Marx said, but there is no particular distinctive I, and then it happens, right? But because there is I, there is he. Is it conscious? Is it this questioning actually Kafkaesque in a way? This questioning, right?
I understand that. Actually, well, that's. There is a reading from a book-length poem that is due to the circumstances, it is fragmentary, and you're always presenting a certain part of the general narrative that is much more multifaceted. Maybe when you're reading the entire book. Actually, there is quite a few different eyes. Some of them referring maybe or hinting on my own voice, but mainly it is, well, we have other voices, other people speaking. And with this particular poem, all the rephrasings of Ovid are having an I embedded somewhere within the texture of a poem. And this one is actually quite close to the original. And there is a beautiful article by Mikhail Gasparov when he is elaborating on Ovid's situation, on his exile, and on the reasons for his exile. And as he is putting it, and it is quite convincing, that was the main inner problem that was torturing Ovid when he was exiled, and was maybe dictating his tactics in literature and life. As Kasparov puts it, he might be not exactly aware of the reason for his sudden exile. And on one hand, he was hoping to find a way of getting back. He was hoping that the emperor would forgive him, but he didn't know exactly what he is to be forgiven for, and that is why he is throughout the book he is always making circles about this supposed mistake that he's made, but he does not exactly know what it is, or he's not going to name it, and anyway, it was just a thing, just a mishap, just a misstep, and so on. So, I don't think that it is a personal, a lyric voice of my own is breaking through in the poem. I think that it is, well, if something is piercing the texture, it is Eliot himself.
I couldn't help listening to this poem, especially after Marina mentioned Kafka. I couldn't help thinking of the first phrase of the real life of Sebastian Knight. Despite of everything, I am comparatively. This is how the novel begins, and that's precisely because the protagonist knows nothing about why or when he will be executed. And in a sense, that is the opposite of exile, of course, but kind of similar because he's a prisoner. Sorry, thank you. And we have time for one more question because we also want to leave some time for book signing, if anyone would like a copy. And no, not twice. Is there anyone who would like to ask the last question? Yes.
It's not exactly a question. I would like to argue that yes, of course, nobody is supposed to understand all the quotations, but I have a feeling that every writer writes for the reader who understands the allusions, who understands the quotations. Maybe not all, maybe it's not the ideal, but the reader who doesn't get the allusions, he misses the point. He misses the sense of the work.
Yes and no. Maybe I am not that kind of writer, right kind of writer, but of course, on one hand, I am always happy to have a reader that understands well all the allusions, all the hints, and maybe the mindset behind the entire structure. But sometimes you're having readers that are able to find in the book, in the poem, something that I did not place there, but it looks convincing. So I feel that I can celebrate that sudden finding, and it is not necessarily a couple of words, a half sentence from Baratinsky, I don't know, or Wisniewski. It could be an explanation, a way of placing things together, and I'm always happy about that. But I think that sometimes in whatever I'm trying to do, the quotations they do not function as a street sign. Now you go to your Mandelstam and read that page 138, and you'll find the answer to the riddle. That's I'm trying to do something different, and maybe the closest image is, the architectural term spolia, the old way of building up a new mansion, a new building, a new construction, while using some elements, some forms of another building that used to be standing here and was demolished. And sometimes you cannot recognize this piece of marble. Does it come from a tombstone, or did it belong to a building structure? What it is representing. It is not representing, but it is very much present.
All right, unfortunately, on this note, we have to finish this part. Let's please take. Thank you so much. And thank you, Mark.